Welcome to another Workshop Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday in the summer.
Carrie, you're getting some foliage in the background.
That's right. It looks real, doesn't it?
Yeah, almost.
If you know about my green thumb, you'd think, wow. No, I lack of.
All right, and this will be the last time you'll see this background, because after Friday we are heading on our maiden voyage, which will go up to Seattle first, Pacific Northwest, and then from there we zipping on over. It'll be quite. Oh, and then will be next Wednesday. But this is Workshop Wednesday, brought to you by schoolbookkeeping.com, where we talk a little bit about the things that you can do inside of QuickBooks to help with your clients. And we've been focusing the last couple weeks, couple months on the accountant tools that you have as an accountant in QuickBooks Desktop, and touching lightly on some of the accountant tools because there are very little in QuickBooks Online. So you get a lot more accountant tools in QuickBooks Desktop. Now, Desktop poses a bit of a challenge when you're working with a client, because the file is not somewhere that you can access it, right? Unless you set that up. Now, yeah. Unless you set it up that way, right? So there is the advantage of QuickBooks Online is that there's nothing to download, install, backup, restore, anything like that. There's no file associated with QuickBooks Online. There is just a login and access that is given to individuals through an invitation process. So as long as you have access to the company file and an internet connection, when you sign in, you can just choose that company. You're in the live data on and working inside of your QuickBooks clients' files in QuickBooks Online. Desktop requires you to access the file in some way, right? So there's a variety of ways to do that. You can set up a cloud hosting, so you put, install QuickBooks in an online environment. So there you're getting the best of both worlds, where it is, as long as you have internet access, you'll be able to access a QuickBooks file, but you need access to be able to do that. There's some setup to be able to do that as well. There is various file sharing services like Dropbox or Google Drive. Qbox is another one where you can actually set it up and check out the company file as long as you have access to that. But what we're going to talk about today is an antiquated process, but it is something that is worth mentioning because there is a lot of confusion around it. And in theory, it sounds awesome. And it's called the accountant's copy process, right? So there's a file, right? So this is one of the few things that allows accountants to work in their client's file locally on their own machine, concurrently with their clients who are physically working on another file somewhere else. So you actually have two different files, and then QuickBooks then allows you to merge those changes back into QuickBooks. So
don't do it yourself. Let QuickBooks tools do it.
Right. So you're not like importing something. You're using the file process to be able to do that. Now, our intention here is to demonstrate both sides of this process, because there is something that the client has to do. Carrie's going to be the client, and then there's something that the accountant has to do. I'll be the accountant, and we just want to set the stage that Carrie was expecting a delivery of furniture to be an hour from now. They just messaged her that it might be coming any minute. So if this is
fall off the screen, that's why.
That's why, right? So just preface that there could be a potential knock on the door, because there's nobody else, Carrie's
I've
home
lost all my
alone.
backup assistants. They're gone. So this is working from home scenario, potential hazard. All right, I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah. So, so let's talk a little bit about like
Would you like
again,
me to
yes, go ahead and close
back
that.
up to how I got here? All right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get you back into the screen. I go to File,
Mhm.
Send Company File, and you have to answer this 70 times. Accountant's copy. Down here, nope, 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 nope. Yes. Client activity.
All right, I'll stop there. Leave that up. So there's two ways to send an accountant's copy, right? There is a save file, which is creating a file, and then you're sending it. And then there is this tempting thing called send to an account.
Oh, I was going to do that one, Dan.
Well, no, we don't want to do that. We're not going to do that today, because send to accountant requires the receiver, the accountant,
You,
in the
I'm the
equation,
customer.
to be a desktop pro advisor and have an active pro advisor membership with desktop, right?
Yeah,
If they
you got all that?
don't, I know we
Oh.
got all that, but
Okay.
if you don't have that, then there's an obstacle with making sure that your license and pro advisor membership is up to date and everything like that. But you can get around that by just saving the file, and that's what we're going to illustrate here, because it's a lot smoother to send to the accountant, because what happens is I'll get an email and then I just download it from the email, and it's a lot safer, right? Because you're actually uploading the file and not needing to save. So it's a lot less cumbersome on the client's on the client side of things. So let's choose the save file, and we'll kind of walk through this. So you're choosing accountant's copy.
Okay.
Next. Now this first thing is first concept to get to understand here is this concept of a dividing date. And this is what allows QuickBooks and the accountant and the client to work separately. So basically you're setting a border, right? And it's a date border. So the accountant will be able to work on transactions dated prior to that date, and the client will be able to work on transactions dated after that date. So that's why that's the only way that you can segregate these things, and that's the way QuickBooks can do that. That way, if you enter a transaction that's dated prior to that date, you'll get a message. If I work on a transaction that's dated after that date, I'll get a message. So if there is a potential, this is where things get a little screwed up sometimes, is that when transactions venture past, it's kind of like the Berlin Wall, right? Like if you go on the other side of the wall, you may get shot. I mean, you won't physically get shot, but there will, some of the changes may not make the journey, and then you've wasted your time. I see this a lot. I've seen this a lot with reconciliations, right? So the client does a reconciliation when one of those transactions is dated prior to the reconciliation date. When the transactions or the import comes back in, it will undo that reconcile all the way in order to put it back in its condition prior to when when the transactions were set, or the accountant's copy was sent. And then, client's upset, you're upset, because now there's more work that needs to be done, all in service of importing your change. So typically the dividing date is the end of the last accounting period. So, end of the year or what have you. So let's go ahead and click next after we've chosen the end of the year. Must close all the windows to create one. And then it's going to ask, where do you save it? Now there's also this concept of the file types, right? So let's talk a little bit about the file types that are used. A QuickBooks working file is a QBW file. And that's for Windows. This is for Windows only. A transfer file, which is what you're making here, is an accountant's transfer, is a QBX file. right? So so that's the file that the client is sending to the accountant. And then we'll see the process here, but
Okay.
go ahead and save this file. So the X.
Okay, it's been saved.
Right. So this is a QBX file, a QuickBooks transfer, accountant's copy transfer file. Now, if you do the send to accountant, then this just sends it via the service, and then I would get an email and be able to download
links,
and restore.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
okay. So you successfully created a copy transfer file, dividing date. All right. Then next step is to deliver this to your accountant, assuming they were using the same version of QuickBooks. So this could be, email, file transfer, Dropbox.
Somehow I get it back to where I just found it, which is in my Easy Cloud desktop. All right. Yeah. So now I'm taking my hat as customer off, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
all right. So now you would do this as an accountant. You would go to File.
Oh, and we'll point out that as the client, it says accountant's changes pending. All right. So now I'm out, all the way out, and I need to.
That's a good point, because the accountant's changes pending, what that does is it puts a few restrictions on the file, and oftentimes it will say, because it has to be in the same condition that it left in order for it to come back. And so QuickBooks has to put a few accountant restrictions on the file that will prohibit the client from doing something. So like resorting the lists, or really changing the chart of accounts. That's kind of a big no-no, especially if the accountant is trying to work on those types of things. If if they merge an account, for example, and now that account is not there, and they've made a journal entry to that account, then it won't come back in. So it puts those restrictions on the file to prohibit that from happening. But that doesn't stop people from doing it.
No, that's why people need Intuit support.
So if they do remove the restrictions, there is zero chance that your changes will come back in. So so that's just something to keep in mind when venturing into this process. Okay, so you would go to open or restore a company.
Okay.
Convert an accountant's copy transfer file. So this is where you have that QBX file. And this screen here just kind of outlines the process, right? So the client creates and sets the dividing date. They send the QBX file to you. You convert that to a QBA file, right? You work in it. And then you export your file of changes, which is a QBY file, right? So there's a QBW. There's a QBW that makes a QBX. Accountant turns it into a QBA and then sends a QBY. Go back into the QBW, right? But that's the kind of the workflow or the cycle here. If they remove the restrictions while the file's out and you have it, then I'm sad to say those changes won't be able to be imported. It's also one of the versions or one of the functions of QuickBooks that allows you to work in different versions, different years versions. So 1 year and before. So if you have a client using 2020 and you have 2021, you can do this process as an accountant. It'll bring it up and you'll be able to send that file back and they'll be able to import it back into their 2020. You won't have that whole...
The reverse of what we
did? No. If your client is using 2021 and you have 2020, then you slap them.
Okay. All right.
Right. So it won't work. It won't work in 2020.
Okay. So at this point, I can hit the next button.
Yes. Yes.
All right. And it's telling
and
what you just said.
Right. This is what you can do in an accounts copy. You can edit and delete most types of transactions. You can add new transactions with any date and add most types of list elements. Edit existing accounts, vendors, and items, and merge and delete and reconcile accounts. What you can't do is edit or delete existing transactions dated after that dividing date, or list elements. You can't edit or delete list elements except those that were at up above, right? So hit next.
Okay, so then this is the file, the one dated today.
Right.
Luckily, there wasn't a lot of navigating happening here.
Right. Typically, that's part of the hard part sometimes, is finding the file, where to go. But you just happen to have it on the desktop, so it's easier to. So now it's you've chosen to. No, they're there. They're calling.
Yes, so I will do this. And
right. So what this does is it turns it into a QBA file, right? So so go ahead and hit save.
Okay.
Well, this is so I mean, you're going to get it because it's converting. It could take a few moments, and I can explain. Another function of this is that you can actually convert this to a working file. So so if your client sent you an accountant's copy and then their computer got stolen or there was a fire and all of their data and their backups went away, this can be converted into a working file. You could just, there's a process to be able to do that. You send it back to them. You're the hero. I've talked to several accountants where that has been the only backup that the client has had. Yeah, maybe it's a couple weeks old, but they sent an accountant's copy to the accountant a couple weeks ago. You can convert that to a working file, and then you're back off. They're back up and running, at least from that point. Of course, they have to re-enter their data from that point. So this is a good point to talk about the accountant's user that you should be creating.
Keep talking.
Or if you've forgotten your password. Because you should set up an accountant's user for this process, because that segregates the changes that you've made from the changes that the edits and updates that they've made, and you'll be able to see that in the audit trail, so that if it comes to that point, you'll be able to tell them. So this is it just gives you a message that you've opened an accountant's copy with a dividing date. You can see in the title bar at the top, it does say that you're in the accountant's copy and what the dividing date is, so that if you tried to do something, it wouldn't let you do that if it's dated in the future. So Carrie, go ahead and try to create a transaction dated today, or edit a transaction and change the date past the dividing date.
Okay, let's see. Let's try.
Once you finally get in.
Writing a check.
Yeah.
Let's just pretend.
Yeah.
And I want to do something today, as you said.
Yeah.
So American Airlines, we want to go want to travel, or we want to do insurance expense. 500.
It's taking out a policy.
Right. Oh goodness, who cares about that? All right, it just saved that. Did it save that?
It did save it.
Goodness.
You hit the previous, right? Yeah, there it is. So the message that came up prior to that.
But it's still stuck in this orange. Let's see what that means. Whoa.
Right.
Okay.
If you bring up another check, you go to write checks again.
Yes, I can do that.
The message didn't come up. Close the check.
Okay.
Now bring up write checks again.
Write checks. Okay. All right.
And of course, now did you disregard the message that came up? anything that's orange like this.
There's always that choice, that chance. What does this orange mean?
Well, the orange means that those changes are not going to come back. They're not going to be part of the changes that you send back to the.
Oh, so if I hit save and close, the message will come up?
No, it was when it showed up. So let's change another let's do another transaction, like enter a bill.
Okay, got it. All right.
There it is.
Oh, this message. I'm sorry.
Right.
I will
the accounts
not.
copy only fields with a highlighted background will go to your client. With a white background will not go back. So if that's the message that it's saying there. It will be attempted. What's that?
Okay. You know how I just ignored it, so I see this is where it gets a little dangerous.
Right.
Okay.
And then it says, please keep in mind that you can change only transactions dated on or before the dividing date that you've created those transactions. So even though you've created a transaction, it's not going to be part of the.
That's what orange means. Okay.
The export. But the orange means that it will go back. The white background will not go back. But that's why you'll see a bunch of orange stuff as opposed to the white backgrounds.
Okay.
So that is, so go ahead and let's actually do a change to a previously dated bill. So let's go back to something that's prior to the dividing date.
Like this?
Sure.
Open bill? Okay.
Yep.
All right. So orange will go back. I want to change this to say a different date.
Sure. It's now in 2020.
All right. Save and
close.
Okay. And that stayed orange, so that date will go back.
Right. So let's say yes there. So you updated the date. So now let's go ahead and export your changes, and we'll talk about importing them back into your client's file. So you'll be send company file. You choose accountant's copy, and then view export changes for client.
Okay. Here's all this.
So there's all the changes, right?
Okay.
Now, if you're using the accountant's copy transfer service, the web-based, you have this button here at the bottom that says send changes to client. That will send them an email and then allow them to import the changes. It's a lot smoother of a process.
You like to do the file.
Yeah, we're gonna choose the create change file because that's actually going to show the QBY file that it's going to be changing or creating during this process. So you hit save there, and it puts in parentheses the name of the file so that which one's the accountant's changes file, which one's the transfer file in that naming of the file itself. So it created that. So then
getting all the way out and bringing it in. Am I changing hats again?
Yeah. So now you're putting your client hat back on.
So I'm going to close.
Go to close and open up the client version of the file.
Okay. Did I hit the
someday?
The power of the internet. Okay, I'm going to open my file.
The second file that's listed there. Just open it.
Okay, and hopefully my memory remembers the password. So we're going to open it. The power of the internet. Okay.
You're in your accountant's copy, not the client file.
How did that happen? Because but that's right. That's right.
No,
that's right. Because this is what it'll say until
it says accountant changes pending. The client's file will say accountant
changes in. That's what I'm doing.
All right, and there they are. All right, give me. Let me request control here. If you need, to go answer the door.
Yes, I do.
Okay, So while Carrie lets the furniture people in, I'm going to. Oh, I can't get into the right file because it's got a password. So we're in. We want to be in the ABC Plumbing Company that has the data on it, or the accountant's changes pending, which should be the client's QBW file. Hang on a second. We'll just wait for that to come up. And this is where things get awfully confusing for the client because of the amount of files that are going back and forth, and that's why QuickBooks has the transfer service to be able to do that. So it takes a lot of the QBX, QBY back and forth out of the equation, and then they just import their changes through the web service as opposed to sending these files. So we're back in. So here you can see that it's the client's version because it says accountant's changes pending at the top. I do want to show from the from this menu. So client activities is what the client will see, right? So they have this when they've sent it. Now they can't send it again, right? So they can't create another accountant's copy. But there's this option to remove restrictions. So if they come to a point where they've got they come to an obstacle and they can't do something, they potentially could say to remove the restrictions, but that will prohibit the changes from actually coming in. So we're going to just choose this accountant's changes from file. Right, and here's the accountant's changes file. That's a QBY. And then we'll open that. Here are those changes that were made. And we're able to click on incorporate accountant's changes. And it's going to close all windows in order to do that. It's going to make a backup. So it forces a backup to happen. So if something goes horribly wrong during this import process, you would have to restore the backup and move forward from there in order to get those changes in. I'm just going to browse to no. Just put it on the Q drive here. Say okay. This location. It gives all sorts of warnings when you do this on the same drive that your company file is actually located on. So it does the backup, saves the backup, and then it's now going to incorporate the accounting changes. Okay. So it did bring in those checks. Carrie's back.
Well, hello. Did you figure it out?
Yeah, so it did bring him back in, but it actually did bring in the check. I don't understand why it did.
It said it wouldn't.
Yeah. Go ahead and open up the check. Let's go into the check.
This here?
You should be able to click on it and take you right to it.
Yeah, it took me right there. Wow.
This must be something new.
Well, and the words that say you cannot enter in new information, apparently you can.
Maybe it's a 2021 thing and we didn't know.
Might be. But the word said we couldn't. Was I right? Didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Right. So you shouldn't be able to do this. But
well, there's another one that I tried to do myself. Was I had an invoice that turned out wasn't going to be, I was going to write it off, and so I didn't want to pay income tax on an invoice that wasn't going to happen, and we couldn't fix it. We just couldn't fix it. It was like because of that dividing date. So it was something I had to deal with later.
Got it. Well, that's the process of creating an accountant's copy from the client's perspective, making some changes in your accountant's version, segregating it from your client. This shouldn't have happened, but but it did. So either there's a mistake or a new feature that we didn't even know. And it may just be for simple transactions like checks or things like that.
Yeah.
To be able to do those types of things. But the dividing date should have prohibited Carrie from creating this check to John's Automotive for the office supplies.
It's kind of a strange category though, right?
Right. Like what kind of office supplies does an automotive place actually have?
I must have bought too much paper or something.
Clearly. Okay, so that is the cycle of using the accountant's copy. Obviously, there are other ways to work with desktop clients. You every time we talk about this accountant's copy process, you have some kind of knee-jerk reaction. What was your experience with the accountant's copy that causes that PTSD of accountant's copy?
Well, I'll tell you what it is. So as the customer, well, I'll tell you, there are a couple of times I've gone to a client and they're like, help clean up my books. And they've sent this to their accountant. And I'm like, oh, and we're there to clean up the books. And you can't unless you cancel the accountant's copy. And then what if the accountant's really working on stuff? So it wreaks havoc if you don't understand what it's for. So if you send an accountant's copy to your accountant to do your taxes and they'll put in the journal entries and make it all pretty, respect that as the client or whatever. And of course,
I've seen, unfortunately, I've been the bearer of bad news with the accountant's copy from the accountants trying to bring in their changes after the restrictions have been removed, because there's no audit trail of that, right? Like they can never confirm or deny. The client swears up and down, oh, I didn't change anything, because they can just send another accountant's copy and it be back in that condition, ready to receive the changes. But if it doesn't come back from the version of which, the exact version of which it came from, there is zero chance. Well, there's two chances, fat and slim, that they'll actually be able to bring in those changes. And when they can't bring in those changes, all that work, right? Everything that the accountant has done to close out that prior period is lost, right? So one thing that can salvage that situation is you do have the ability, if journal entries were made, you can send a journal entry file, and that's why it's a good idea to do all your changes as journal entries if you're using this process, because if it doesn't come back in and there's zero chance of that actually bringing it back in, or there's corruption in the file and it just has a big challenge being able to do that, and you have to restore the backup, go back to your original file and export out your journal entries. That is actually something that is cross version, so you can actually do that. I could do that in a 2020 version, and you can bring it in in 2021.
And ultimately, that's really what, when you're having someone help you with your taxes, that's really what you want help with. I mean, I think there's sort of two types of consultants, one that does your taxes and another that really understands QuickBooks and has an accounting background. And so it's different things. I think for someone doing a big cleanup, it's better for them to have access through hosting, Zoom, work with the client, really clean up the file and have the audit trail on and all that. But beyond that, it gets those, you don't want to lose those journal entries. You always want to tie down to your tax return. So just be aware and that the accountant doesn't hold on to your file for a year either. That's very painful.
Right. So, yeah, the accountant's copy is kind of like a politician. They have all these great promises, but very rarely do they deliver on them. So it may work, it may not, but it is there, right? So a simple and it does allow you to work in your file and your client's file concurrently to them and bring in those changes. Just beware that it's riddled with challenges. So that's you've got to.
That's fine, Dan.
Exactly. So that's our workshop today on the accountant's copy process.
Moving
with
working from home
with some furniture delivery sprinkled in for flavor. So we'll see you next time on another Workshop Wednesday, and we hope you have a great week.
Have a good one.